Hello, this is the Forest Daughter, and on this cold morning in central Illinois, I've been finishing up just some ephemera tags and journaling tags for future books. If you're like me, you print out lots and lots of these and only finish a few for each book. So I've just taken it upon myself to come up with some different ways to put these into, see if I can get this there we go. So I now have a crocodile corner rounder. That took some getting used to. But on the bigger cards, it does seem to keep them from getting torn up on the edges, going in and out of pockets. So I've started to round my larger cards. This is a beautiful image of a forest altar. And I will include in the comments or the description where I got these digitals. This one's pretty simple. I just put on a textured backing. It looks like a woven backing, just a little bit of texture, and just a torn collage cluster with a little tiny star on it. Not very complicated, using up little bits. So it's cardstock. 2 pieces of cardstock gives it a little bit of sturdiness. This one I started with a LianaScrap unicorn, and I decided to put a border on it. So it's just glued down on some pretty digital background paper. And I added in the deep blue woods because this paper has a really dark blue, almost a midnight blue. Glued it to the back of a teal file folder, hanging file folder that I got at a thrift shop, and has added some strips. This dark color works really well with a permanent marker or a gel pen. It's rounded the corners. So I have some of mine done with the dark backing just for that purpose. It's a little tiny card with the path through the forest. And I thought I would hang the pocket down on this one. So it pulls out just some pretty scraps from digital paper. Little tiny space to write on the back. Upside down pocket. Been working with some blues and cream colors today. This is a large card on cardstock. Tea-dyed paper. It's a little strip that folds across. Another little random torn off piece, and I made it line up with the paper. I also do beading, not on this channel, but I do beading. And I had a single earring. I don't know if I had lost the other, but I decided that the colors and the angles were pretty with this crystal in the center of this design. Using a stiff twine, fine but stiff, I just punched a hole. When you're using 2 thicknesses of paper, it doesn't usually tear. You don't usually need an eyelet unless you're being decorative. So this is just twine, fine twine that has a little stiffness, and I'm going to be using this a lot. I really like the plainness of it. It doesn't just droop. So an earring piece. On this one, I rounded the corners, added what looks like my cigar band designs. I love those where you just use a very decorative pattern piece in a thin strip and sometimes stack more than one of those atop of each other. This one I put a button on. You flip it over, it's tea-dyed paper. I started with a tree medallion and a little tiny circle here that repeats this circle and covers the embroidery floss holding on the button. And did some lines using a bamboo pen and black ink. Clearly, I'm not very good at lining them up, but I did let the pen run dry so I would have some interest in the lines fading in and out. And I splotched it by mistake, but it doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful. In fact, I think it's much more interesting and full of character if it isn't just cookie cutter perfect. So to put the beads on the front, before you put on the button, You get a long strand of what you're using. For this, I used a cream embroidery floss, and you hold it to the front, one of the strands. You go up through the button, down through the card, up through the button, just like you normally would sew on a button, but end with the strand, the second strand on top. Then tie a knot up under the button and add the beads and a knot to keep them from sliding off. These beads, and I'm not sure I can get this where you can see them, are a check pearl bead, check glass, and they have a single cut. That means they take a normal round bead and they slice off a little section, and that lets them be really reflective. So that's what's on this one. So on this one, it was the button, the beads, lining, and adding a band, as well as a little tag on top. Okay, here's two of my favorites. This one is a hedgehog from LianaScrap. All I did was take a strip of paper that had a little bit of script or a hint of a script on it and cut it in two and put it on top and bottom. It adds kind of a framing to the centerpiece. The back is another piece of paper. It's where I got the script from, so it goes well. Nice and stiff, easy to put in and out of pockets when it's 2 layers of cardstock. And I didn't round the corner or do anything else fancy to this. It will go in a pocket with this one, which is some of that same script. I did round the corner, and I did use tea-dyed, no, this is coffee-dyed paper. So I soaked it in the coffee and took it out and let it almost dry, splattered some more of the coffee on it, so it gives you these drip patterns, and then sprinkled instant coffee granules on it, which gives it kind of an oily, reflective pattern. I like it. It's a sense of chaos, and I really like it. But it's not hard to write over, so you could definitely write a journal entry on it. Again, I used the really stiff but fine twine. And to add interest, I drew around 2 papers, cardstock, digital background papers, one around a penny and one around a nickel, and then glued them to the same pattern. Tied them on with this twine, and then to add interest to the ends, I just added an additional knot. So you could do a whole series of knots, which would be fun to feel. You could string beads on these. If you want the beads just down here at the end, you tie a knot here, put on some beads, and tie another knot, and then the beads will be down at the ends. So I thought that was an interesting way to just add a touch of color to the top that moved. Here's one where I did larger tags. These are on hanging file folders in a tan, and I just put some tea-dyed paper. The tops are cut differently. This one is cut how you would imagine a standard tag, and this one is cut on the diagonal. On the backs, I just put scrap paper in colors. So if they ever do get flipped over, they will add interest. On the back, it's a scrap paper glued down the sides. Another little rounded piece, since I use a lot of cardstock, they're nice and stiff. Tea-dyed paper on the back. It's enough to write the name of your secret lover, or your favorite character, or an anime dream. Just a little tiny tidbit. It's your journal. You can put whatever you want in it. So I'm hoping that this gives you some ideas how to go through that stack of tags that you've cut out and haven't gotten around to finishing off. Just the tag, colored background with tea on top, a button, decorative strip, a medallion, bamboo pin lines. Very simply, just another of those cigar band designs where you layer up 2 patterns, skinny one in the middle, and then I let this one hang down on the back. Here I used a piece of jewelry, just put it on there with a piece of twine, and again, because I use at least cardstock and a thick paper on the back, I don't usually have to put an eyelet in here. it's sturdy enough it won't tear through. And a lot of times if I'm concerned, instead of using an eyelet, I'll put a decorative square of paper and punch through that. And that acts kind of like, you know, when you put your 3-ring binder together and put page edge protectors on, those hole protectors. It'll work like that to add a little strength so you don't have to worry about it tearing through. And again, a pocket coming out the bottom. Dots to think about. A darker color for black permanent marker or a gel pen. And a simple collage on a textured paper. I hope this has given you some ideas, and if you're stuck inside like I am because it's 5 degrees Fahrenheit outside, you can get something done. So later when you're working on fall journals or summer journals, you'll have a whole selection to just tuck in the pockets and make it special. Thanks for joining me. This is the Forest Otter.